Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about running health checks using the PumpCX platform. When executing health checks on the PumpCX platform, what you generally have is a reasonably low number of test cases and then execute these on a regular basis. So for instance, most organisations have multiple in-dial numbers. We would generally have a test case for each in-dial number, and that test case should go through and have a fairly complete flow through that in-dial number, terminating either at the end of a self-service or terminating as the call is about to enter queue. You really don't want to have these calls entering into queues and targeting agents, because given you execute these on a regular basis, it'll start to impact your contact center. And you don't even want the call actually entering queue. Otherwise, given you are dialing them regularly, you'll start to see multiple abandoned calls, which will impact your contact center stats. So for your average organisation, if you had 5 or 6 in-dials, you would have 5 or 6 test cases. We then execute these on a regular schedule, either during business hours, for example, every 15 minutes, or alternately, if the contact center is at 24/7, then you'd execute them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on a regular basis, normally every 15 minutes or so. It's good to execute these test cases often, in that one of the primary concepts behind health check is you want to find out if your environment's having issues before you're notified by your customers. Be your customers end customers who are consumers who are having a poor CS experience and calling up to complain, or we're still not calling you back and calling somebody else, or whether you're an outsourced provider and your customers or other business units coming back to you complaining that the platform you've stood up is not working. In any event, they're end customers, and you want to know about your issues before you're notified by the end user. So, what would this generally look like? We have a sample health check set up here for a fictitious bank, which has 6 lines of business: retail banking, phone banking, loans, mobile banking, internet banking, and credit cards. And each one of those is actually quite a simple test case. And that we're going to dial into the environment, navigate through the IVR, check the attached data is correct, check the voice is correct, and then hang up on the call. So we've pre-prepared these 6 test cases, which we see here. The test cases in lines of business. And then to execute these, as executing any pump test case, we need to bind them into a pump test set for execution. And here we've got a test set folder called line of business with one test set within it called demo bank. If we open that up, we see our 6 test cases all bound together. Now on this screen, there are a few really pertinent parts we need to look at. The first is the test name. This will become very relevant when we go and look at the dashboard that will be generated as we execute this. We could update this test name to reflect the label of the dashboard that's displayed. We've got the test cases which are involved, which are our 6 line of business test cases. Then finally, we've got the execution schedule. So this is how often and during what days of the week should this test case be applied. So in this case, we're running it 24/7. So Monday through Sunday, 12 AM till 11:59 PM. Executing each 15 minutes, we're going to execute this test set with a maximum of 10 concurrent calls. So all the calls will run at once, starting 1 per second. So this is general, the way you'd schedule any test case. Then the final thing is we need to drag across this expose this dashboard selector. So what this does, as soon as we've got the test set created and the test set schedule, if we look back on the main screen, we will see that we have scheduled test cases coming up every 15 minutes for this test set. If we look back in the history, we actually see that it's also been executed each 15 minutes recently. Furthermore, we also have a dashboard created, which we can open here. What this dashboard is going to show us is a view which could be put up on a projector or displayed on a desktop, which shows the name of the test case, so demo bank, and then each one of the test cases and the recent results, so whether it was successful or not and the time that test case was executed. If any of these test cases fail, it will display the reason for failing. So for instance, the call was not answered, or the system was not responsive, or the audio quality was poor. And so looking up straight on the dashboard, we can immediately see the environment and whether or not it's running. Of course, we also get our regular alarms if any test case fails, as per any scheduled test case. So if any test case fails within the test set, an alarm will be raised, which can be configured to either send out an SMS, an email, or an SNMP trap to allow notification immediately if there are problems in the environment. We can, of course, also enable an extra option which allows any failed test case to be immediately repeated and with only alarms raised if it fails the second time. The alarms, of course, are also listed within the Alarms tab of the Pump environment. Thank you very much for your time today.